95% of dopamine and serotonin are developed in the gut. John Giordano joins us to talk about his 37 years in recovery and the work they are doing at South Beach Detox. He's a 10th degree black belt in the Karate Hall of Fame. He talks about how many treatment providers are based on 70-year-old, outdated technology. He talks about some of the current research in the addiction industry, various modalities, including Reward Deficiency Syndrome, and is a lot of fun to listen to. Enjoy. Welcome to the Illuminate Recovery Podcast. We shed light on mental health issues, mental illness, and addiction recovery, ways to cope, manage, and inspire. Beyond the self-care we will discuss, you may need the help of a licensed professional. My name's Kurt Nider. I'm a husband, a father, entrepreneur, a handyman, and a student of life. I avoid conflict, I deflect with humor, and I'm fascinated by the human experience.
And I'm Shelley Mangum. I am a clinical mental health counselor, and my favorite role of all times is grandma. I am a seeker of truth, and I feel like life should be approached with tremendous curiosity.
I ask the dumb questions.
I fill in the gaps.
The Illuminate Recovery Podcast is brought to you by Illuminate Billing Advocates. Make billing and collection simple with leader in substance abuse and mental health billing services. Verification and analysis of benefits, pre-authorizations, utilization management, accurate claim submission and management, denial and appeal management, and industry-leading reporting. Improve your practice's cash flow and your ability to help your clients with Illuminate Billing Advocates.
John Giordano is with Kurt and I today. We are super excited. I'll tell you right now that if you don't know John, you're going to know John well, and you're going to want to know John, because this guy's got more information than I know what to do with, and I'm pretty excited that we get to share with him. John has been in the addiction recovery world for a long time, has a story of his own. And John, I just want to say thanks for taking some time to be with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited. It might be good, it might be fun to, I want to bounce all over the place, but it might be good to just start at the beginning and kind of talk about your journey and how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Okay. Let me see. Where do you want to start from? I'm a little confused. How you want me to start?
Yeah, start.
I want to go with the treatment?
Yeah, start with maybe your own recovery story and how that ended up changing your direction and what you're doing today.
Okay, making it a short story because it's a long story and we don't have that much time. I want to get to the stuff that's going to help people. First of all, I didn't start using drugs and alcohol till I was 20. I'm a karate teacher, Black Belt Hall of Fame, 10th degree black belt, all that stuff. And I was very disciplined and very focused when I was younger, so I didn't do any of that. If I drank when I was a kid, I would throw up, so of course I didn't want to drink. Smoking pot I didn't like. I didn't like any of the drug stuff. And what happened was when I was teaching on Miami Beach, my students used to come in stoned. So I used to look at them and I say, oh, okay. And then I used to work them out and make them throw up. I figured that'll stop them. Well, that didn't stop them. They came back the next day, did it again. And they would tell me, Sensei means teacher, by the way, Sensei, did you ever do drugs? I said, no, what do I need to do that for? He said, well, you should try it. And I'm saying to myself, why am I going to try this? Okay, well, there's something wrong with these people. They keep coming back. I keep torturing them, and they keep doing the same thing over and over again. I said, okay, so to make it really short, I was living in an apartment in South Beach, in Miami Beach, and one of my friends came over and he had a little bottle of clear liquid. And I said to him, what's that? He said, oh, that's acid, okay, LSD. I said, well, let me see it. So I took it and I drank the whole thing. And he flipped out. And I don't blame him because it was 5 hits. That means enough for 5 people, okay? So I went on this journey for about 3 or 4 days, day and night, no sleeping. Everything looked like cardboard. Colors were flying all over the place. My mind was going 1,000 miles an hour. And that was the first drug I did. And then I started that journey, okay? And I started smoking pot, and I started doing pills, and I started doing all kinds of things over the years, different marriages, different things. I'm just going to cut right to the chase. And I was destroying my life. It was terrible. And, meanwhile, I was still teaching the police departments. I was, I was doing all kinds of different things. I led 2 lives. Of course, most addicts, we live 2 lives, What you see is not what you get. So anyway, as time went on, I was getting out of hand, and my family, by the way, my family is a mafia family. My father was a heroin dealer. My uncles were hitmen. Matter of fact, my uncle threw my wedding when I was 20. The caterer insulted my uncle in front of the family, and he killed him. So, and I had to go run back to Florida with my bride because the police were coming to my grandmother's house. I wrote a book about all this stuff, by the way. So it's called The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up. It's my life story. So there's a lot of stories like that in there. I used to do collection work for the smugglers. I used to teach one of the cartels, bodyguards, karate. I used to sell drugs. I did all the things drug addicts do. And anyway, my family did an intervention on me, and I started laughing. I'm wondering who's doing an intervention on them. And my mother said, "I'll never talk to you again." And she started crying. And I figured, you know what? My mother doesn't usually say that. The old Italian mothers, So I said, all right, I'll go to treatment, get everybody off my back, take a break. Maybe I was getting a little out of hand, which was like getting a lot out of hand. But of course, we don't know that. We're in denial. We figure everything is normal, carrying guns, putting it in people's mouths, selling drugs, all kinds of crazy stuff. Anyway, I went to treatment, and while I was in treatment, I came up, I never forget, I came up the elevator, and I was wearing dark sunglasses, and the reason why I was doing that was I didn't want anybody to know who I was, which was a joke. That's how messed up I was. Because I taught most of the nurses and doctors' kids. So I don't want to know the karate teacher's a drug addict, So anyway, the first day, one of the kids came up from the administration office, the business office. It was one of my students. So that facade was over with. I took the class and threw them away. Then I was in group, and they were telling me to share in group. I said, if I share, I have to kill you. So I said, I won't even get high with people like you. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I was very nasty, very stupid. Really, I was really scared, ashamed, angry, felt guilt. I started to feel again, when addicts do drugs and alcohol, we're not in touch with our reality. And so what happened was, I remember it was Christmas time. It was December 4th when I went into treatment. And it was Christmas Eve. I wanted to go home, and I wanted to spend it with my children, I told them, which was a lie. I wanted to go home because my friends used to come over and give me Christmas cards with Coke in it. So that's why I really wanted to go home. But, that didn't happen. So they told me I couldn't go, and I got really angry. And see, I didn't just get angry, I got rageful. So I went into my room, I punched the door, I started to cry, and I never unpacked my luggage because I was always leaving, by the way. And I used to pull my shirts out all wrinkled, I didn't care, And I remember the therapist telling me, John, do you ever get down on your knees to pray? I said, look, I'm a recovering Catholic. Are you crazy? That's all we did was get on our knees. I got calluses on my knees. So he said, no, for humility, right? I said, oh, why? God don't listen to me? How about if I'm in a closet? You think he hears me? But then I was in a lot of pain and a lot of anger, a lot of rage, actually. And I decided to get down on my knees. And I got down on my first knee, but I couldn't get down on my first knee because it wouldn't go down. I know that may sound a little strange, but it wouldn't go down. So I had to push my knee down, okay? Then I had to push my other knee down. And for the first time in my life, I prayed for God, whatever that was, okay, to take this away from me. And it vanished, like it never was there. And I'll never, ever forget that. And as sick as I was, I tried to get the anger back. It didn't come back. So that was the beginning of me changing. And that's what I call a spiritual awakening.
So when you say it was gone, are you saying the pride and the anger was gone, or are you saying the addiction entirely?
No, the anger and the rage was gone. And that, I don't know about you or anybody else, that never happened to me. You know, it would take me a day, sometimes hours. You know, and I didn't even try to get it back. It didn't happen. And it was really, I got to tell you, it was really freaky. You know, it was really weird. And that was kind of like my journey, and other things happened. I remember we had a thing called exiting. That was like the end of the third week, close to the fourth week. And exiting was where the nurses and the doctor and everybody would take you into a room, and they would say how you were doing and see if you needed more treatment or whatever. So me, I was acting like really, really cool. I was talking in group, and so the doctor says, "Oh, John's doing really well," and the nurses said, "Yeah, he's doing good." And the head doctor said, she looked at me, she says, "He's full of shit." Just like that. I blew up. I said, "You fat, I said, you know what? I can kill all of you. They'll never get out of this room alive if I wanted to." And one of the doctors just said to me, "You know, John, all we want to do is help you." And I was hysterical crying. I felt like I was inside my shoes and my shoes were walking out of the room, to be honest with you. And that's when things really changed. And then I came out of treatment. So I can go on and on and on, but I think that just about shows you and I only have one white chip, by the way. Never went back to treatment, coming up on 37 years. I didn't think I would get 37 minutes, but here I am.
That's pretty incredible. And I imagine, I mean, I don't know exactly what it's like living in, growing up in a mafia family, but you've described it a bit. And I imagine that there was a lot of anger and a lot of hostility that you witnessed a lot. So giving up your anger and losing that that's not a simple thing.
Well, my family was very, they're very warm and friendly. You see, most people don't realize, they think, it wasn't like a real mafia. It was like a mafia, I'll put it that way. But, the family is very important. My father was very strict. If I came home a minute late, I would get the belt. My mother used to protect me. Italian mothers, that's what they do. My father was trying to make money, trying to make a living. And that's what he decided to do. He used to have a fruit stand. He used to have a restaurant. But he used to sell drugs too. And I said I would never be like him, and I became just like him.
And isn't that the way it works?
Kind of.
So John, talk a little bit. You've been in the treatment world, your own, and then in the recovery world for a really long time. Talk about some of the things that you've learned and discovered about getting well.
Well, here's the deal. First of all, it's not a cakewalk for anybody, okay? It's very difficult. But it's a lot easier than living the life of drugs and alcohol and associated behaviors. You see, Dr. Blum, he's the geneticist I work with, he coined the phrase RDS, Reward Deficiency Syndrome. You see, because we keep on separating, this is drugs, this is alcohol, this is sex addiction, this is gambling addiction, this is shopping addiction, and on and on and on. Really, it's a deficiency of dopamine and serotonin that we're hunting for. And since everyone has a different footprint, we gravitate towards different things. And most people are cross-addicted anyway. I never met an addict that only had one addiction. So, and what it does is the addiction hides. Let's say you're an alcoholic, all right, and you're drinking scotch, so you decide to go to beer. Now you stop drinking beer, you start smoking pot. Then you stop smoking pot, then you start taking Xanax. Then you stop taking Xanax, you go back to alcohol. So, it's just hopscotch. And that's what a lot of people go through. And especially with me and my wife, when I first came out of treatment, because my wife used to do drugs too, she hands me a vial of Coke and says, "Well, just take one hit." And I says, "I don't think that's going to work very well. And why in the world would you do that? Of course, now I know because she's an addict. Of course she did it. Misery always needs company, you know? And I was told in the beginning not to make any major decisions for the first year. And for some reason, I listened, okay? And I went to therapy with her. She kept using, I wasn't. And it was back and forth, and then eventually I had to get divorced. And I ended up being homeless because she got the car, she got the house, and she got the kids. And I got, my friend had a hotel and gave me a room that I was in. And I had a bike that somebody loaned me, you know. And I went through all the things that we go through, not knowing what the heck is going on. I said, this is recovery. This is hell. You know, I didn't know. I was in a strange land. I put it either. I couldn't go with all my friends. Not that I didn't try. You know, I'm not going to say, oh, I was a perfect little addict. No. Okay. What I did was my friend owned the nightclub. So I went to the nightclub to see the guys, you know, and hang out. Not a good idea. They're drinking, and they felt uncomfortable around me. I know, because I felt uncomfortable around them. Then all of a sudden, they would disappear and come back with white powder all over their nose. And I said, what am I doing here? So I left. Then I used to sit in the room and cry and get depressed. And my kids used to come and cry with me and say, Daddy, what are you doing here? You know? So I went through all of that stuff. But, you know, it made me stronger. Now, at the time, you would have told me that, I probably would have hit you over the head. Okay? But it did make me stronger. And God doesn't put anything in your life you can't handle. You know? I used to hear it all the time. I didn't want to hear it, but it's true. At least for me, it was. And I after 14 months, I was in this, it was an ALF, adult living facility for older people. And my friend owned the place. I told him to turn it into a 3/4 house. And I told him what that was, where people come and live, that it's a structured environment. They have to get a job, have to go to meetings. They have to drop urines and stuff like that. And that's what he did. And he moved people out. And then we had a 3/4 house, was very successful, called the Tudor Hotel in Miami Beach. And then I got tired of that, and I got another idea. And I came up with an idea to open up a treatment center. Now, what do I know about treatment centers other than I was in one? Okay? And I only went to the 9th grade. I quit school when I was in 9th grade. And I told my friend, listen, I have this famous doctor that wants to open up a treatment center. I lied. I didn't talk to him. He was my doctor, but I never talked to him about that. He said, well, John, how much do you need? What do I know how much I need? Oh, $250,000, I said to him. He said, if you got him, I'll give you the money. I said, okay. So I went into the doctor's office, and I told him, I said, hey, I got $250,000. How would you like to open up a treatment center? So he laughed, and he said, you know, I was just thinking about that. He was, you know, he's always a big joker, you know. So we opened up my first treatment center. And I went, you really want my whole story? Because it's, okay. We opened up my first treatment center. It was a hospital-based program. It was 30-bed detox and residential, 12-bed psychiatric. And then we opened that up and we made it like a holistic, because I was always into the Eastern medicine. And, you know, we had the food we changed. We had the beds. We took out the hospital beds. We made them regular beds. We put motivational pictures on the wall. The colors of the place, we made them nice and earth colors. We did meditation. We did exercise with them and all these kind of things in the beginning. And it was great. I thought I died and went to heaven. I remember I stood there on the wing of a hospital. Here I am in a hospital. I have a wing of the hospital, 14 months clean, all right? And I'm standing around and I'm looking and I'm going, this is impossible. How did this happen? You know, and I always wanted to become a therapist. Well, meanwhile, in the beginning, I was the administrator. I was the guy that helped with marketing. I learned every different place. Well, what happened was, you know, I didn't have an education, so I had to go back to school. And I got my GED, which was another journey because I didn't go to school for 25 years. And, you know, I tried to sabotage myself. I didn't read the book that you have to read before you go take the test. You the pre-test and all that other stuff. Because, us addicts, what we do, we have to have a way out. So, if I failed, they would say, well, I never read the book, So I'll never forget it. I went there, and this woman had her back towards me, and I was saying, excuse me, I'm here to take the test. She said, I said, excuse me. She said, oh, you must be here to take the test. So she said, everybody's nervous. It's okay, right? So I smiled. That broke the ice. I walked into the room, and I'm watching people going up to the proctor. They didn't even know how to put their name on the paper. I said, oh, I'm in the right place. I can do this, And anyway, 3 weeks later, I got the nail, and I cannot believe it, I passed. How? I don't know. I never had algebra. I never had any of that stuff. I passed. So then I went to the Addiction Training Institute. You have to have 300 hours of addiction training and 6,000 hours of supervised, on-the-job training. And I took the test, and I was the only one that passed in my little group. And it was really funny because everybody was laughing at me because I was always into alternative medicine. So I'm wearing these goggles with lights, and I have a headset on, and I had all the questions in this recorder that was playing in my head with this mind. It's called a mind map, a mind machine. I don't remember what it was, right? And everybody's laughing. I'm walking around the room. One guy was a PhD, one guy's an LCSW, and they wanted to get a CAP, a CAP, Certified Addiction Professional. We took the test. I passed. They failed. But they want the machine now, So it was kind of funny. Anyway, and the way you take the test, you had to go, and they sit you on a little chair and a little chair, and they're up here, and you're down here, and they have a little tape recorder that they're going to tape, and you have to give a case presentation, right? So I'm going to give my case presentation, and they're stone-faced, they're not supposed to even say or do anything. So all of a sudden you hear a voice from the room. It's going, hey man, anybody want coffee? And he didn't go away. He kept saying it. And I busted out laughing. I couldn't take it anymore. And they had a laugh. So that broke the ice, which was really good. And it wound up being I passed the whole test. Then also I was, they named me their valedictorian of the school. And they put me in the magazine and all this other kind of stuff. And it was a little different for me because I owned the treatment center and all the students wanted jobs in the treatment center. But the problem was the teachers wanted a job with me. So it was like upside down. And long story short, it was really horrible what happened. I had my therapist. I wanted him to work in the treatment center with me. And the other therapist that I knew from Mount Sinai Hospital, I didn't know it wasn't right to steal people. I just took them because I thought they were really good and I wanted to give back. So my counselor, who helped me save my life, all right, he used to make $29,000 to be a program director. I gave him $50,000. And everybody else, I gave a raise at least $10,000 or $20,000. So they all came. I was like the Pied Piper, with the money. So as things were going along, all of a sudden one day, and I was very naive, being a street kid, I don't know what to tell you, but nobody messaged you in the street because then they don't want to get punched in the face. But when you're in recovery, you're not supposed to do that stuff, right? And I don't look at people like that. Oh, they're in recovery, they're going to be good. Well, that's not really true. Okay, people still carry along their old behaviors with them. Anyway, we couldn't make payroll. And so what do you mean you don't make payroll? We're packed. The treatment center was packed. So the guy that put the money up said, they're stealing. I said, never in a million years are they stealing. They're in recovery. I looked like a moron, okay? But anyway, he said, no, and then they started telling me that he was stealing. I said, how can he be stealing? You don't even have the checkbook, Anyway, I go into the doctor's office and I say, are you stealing? He put his head down and he said he had a sex addiction. So he was buying hookers and buying apartments for them, and he was taking the money and doing all that. And my therapist didn't like working for his client, so he was really jealous. And long story short, he got rid of me. I didn't have a contract. I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't think I needed one. How could you not be grateful for me helping you like that? I was just grateful for being there. Well, anyway, they offered me the outpatient program, which had 3 clients. And I said, well, what about my friend's money? And, how can he said, look, if you don't sign this paper, we'll just open up another corporation and you're out. So where am I going to get 6,000 hours? And how am I going to not protect my friend? So they gave him the accounts receivables. They gave me the outpatient. For 3 clients, they figure I'd burn out and I'd leave. But that didn't happen. I came up with an idea how to have continuity of care. So going from the inpatient to the intensive outpatient to outpatient to aftercare. So they wanted to make millions of dollars. And I didn't do it. I was making a salary. This was in 1985. So it wasn't so bad. I was making $60,000 a year. I was working 20 hours a week. And I was in heaven because I love what I did. But the therapist kept on trying to get rid of me, but I was protected by the executive secretary, who was the old girlfriend of the doctor, and she was protecting me, so he'd never be able to get rid of me. But then he sends this other therapist in there, doctor, and to check him. He says, look, the clients don't like him. He's not doing a good job. His charts are terrible. Go in there, you'll see, and then we'll have to get rid of him. So the guy comes in, and he was a boxer. I'm a karate guy, So he sat in my groups for 2 weeks and looked at my charts, and he said, okay, what's going on? He says to me. I said, what do you mean? He says, your charts are perfect. The clients love you. They don't even want to leave your group. He says, you're an asset to them. Why is he saying that you're not? I says, well, then I told him the story. So anyway, long time, he went back, and I wish I was a fly on the wall, and he told him that, what are you, nuts? This guy's an asset to you. So as time went on and I got my 6,000 hours, this gentleman became my sponsor. For those who don't know what a sponsor is, that's somebody who takes you through the steps and, in the self-help program and things like that. Anyway, I had enough. And you see, my uncle, who I told you killed the caterer, he had a substance abuse problem, and we put him in a treatment center. And what happened with that was, they came running in my office. They go, John. I said, oh, I thought he tried to hurt somebody. He says, your uncle's telling everybody how many people he killed. I said, I told you what he did. I said, but they thought I was making it up. My stuff is there's no sense in my stuff making it up because it's already over the top. Okay? So anyway, he knew who my uncle was. All right? And I went into his office. I told him, look, I'm going to rearrange your face. All right? A plastic surgeon will never be able to fix this. Okay? And then I'm calling my uncle. He's going to shoot your knees out if I don't have the contract that you promised me 6 years ago. So within an hour, I had the contract. Now, I stayed there about 2 or 3 months more, and then I quit. And I went to the next place. And the next place is, that's why I wrote the book, Never Give Up. And I sat there for 6 years. I swallowed my pride, swallowed my ego, and I just cared about helping people. I didn't give a hell about, they robbed me, I didn't want to get into, who cares? All right, they did what they did. But anyway, so now I don't have a job. I got $80,000 on my contract. It was like a joke. They made millions, I made $80,000. That was better than nothing. So my friend said to me, John, this guy wants to open up a treatment center. I says, oh, okay. He says, look, put a business plan together. So I never put a business plan together. But I went online and I looked and I asked my friends and, different things. And I put a business plan together. So I took the business plan and I went up there and I was asking for $250,000 again. Okay, it's the only number that stuck into my head. And so I went there, and just before I get there, I forgot the business plan. Now I can't go back. I got to go forward. I go forward. I said, look, I apologize. I forgot my business place. I don't need it. I know who you are. Here's a napkin. Tell me what you want to do. So I wrote it down. So we opened that up for about a year. I met this guy who was very well known in West Palm Beach, because that's where the program was. I didn't know anybody in West Palm Beach. I was from North Miami. And we did really well. I made him my sponsor. He was great. I gave him $50,000 a year, just like the other guy. He was working in a hospital making $29,000. And anyway, I didn't know the guy was a corporate raider, and that's what happened. Okay, a year later, he took the program out from under me again. I didn't have a lawyer again. Wasn't their fault, my fault. I didn't do what I needed to do for me, you know. And he fired me. I said, you can't fire me, I'm your partner. He said, well, go read the contract. Well, he fired me. My friend, who was my sponsor, said I can't leave because I just bought a house. So I walked out with my little box, sat on the trunk of my car and cried. Here I am again. I took a whole year and I built this program. I got JACO accreditation and all this other stuff. Anyway, now I went to the Better Way, which is an indigent place, which I think we were off here. We were talking about was an old TC. That's a therapeutic community where they put you in the middle of the room, they beat you up, and they try to put you back together again. I never understood that because I didn't need any help beating myself up. I did a better job than they would. So eventually I quit there, and the girl I was going out with said, why don't you open up a treatment center? I said, I'm not opening up a treatment center. Forget it. Right? So she says, no, do it. I said, look, I only got $300 left because I had a spending addiction. And, that's my other addiction I had. So anyway, my friend had a little building. It was 750 square feet. I decided to, I went over to him and he says, John, I said, how much you want to rent that place for? He says, how much you got? I said, I got $300. He said, I'll take it. He says, give me that money in a couple of months, get going, and then you can pay me. I said, okay. And I got my friend from work, this guy, Jerry, and I gave him 50% of the company because I was 50% of nothing. He says, where's the books? I said, I don't have any books. He says, well, how do you get the money? Well, they give me the money and put it in my pocket. As long as they get enough money to pay my bills, that's all I cared about. So anyway, he said no, and then he handled the books, and then he got his son, and whose son was a genius on the internet. And long story short, we turned the company, I still can't believe it. In 2012, we sold the company for $45 million. We had 7 buildings, 147 employees, and we were known all over the country for the type of treatment that we did that nobody was doing. Now, the outcome studies that we did was with third party. We had Dr. Blum, and we had Dr. Schoenthaler from Stanislaus University. They did our outcome studies, and we did it in a way that nobody else was doing it. We had most of the people stayed in town, and we hired a 3/4 way house. That's where people go, and like I said earlier, structured environment, they drop urines on them and things like that. And we told them we want reports on their behavior. We want to know about if they drop urines on them and if they were participating. Then they would come to our aftercare program, and we'd drop urines on them again and do the whole number all over again. And that's how we did our outcome studies for people that were in town, people that were out of town. Dr. Blum knew people from MIT, and usually when they do outcome studies, they call the addict up and they say, well, how you doing? And the addict goes, oh yeah, I'm doing good, man. I'm not doing anything. It's like a joke, all right? But what we did, we had MIT had a beta program that they were developing that measures the inflections in the voice, the tonalities in the voice, and they can tell if you're lying or not. So we put that into our mix, and then we also called up the family members or the significant others to make a cross-check and see how they were really doing. To be honest with you, we had a 70% outcome study, that people stay clean for a year. I know it sounds absurd, I get embarrassed every time I have to say it, but it was a real number, It wasn't baloney. Post-acute withdrawal syndrome, for those who don't know, they call it pause. That's when people get rid of the drugs and they have all this other stuff going on. And I asked doctors, what do you do with it? Nobody knows. They know what they say, time. That's because they don't know. But we knew. We put them in a hyperbaric chamber. Oxygen under pressure heals the brain. It also heals TBI cases, traumatic brain injury cases. There's a ton of science on this. Israel just came out with a report. I don't know if you guys know what telomeres are. You know what telomeres are? Okay, telomeres are the ends of chromosomes. Okay, now we have a biological clock and a chronological clock. Biological clock, as you know, is internal. Telomeres are the little strings that on the ends of chromosomes, and as we get older, those strings get shorter. But Israel found out if you do hyperbarics for 5 days a week, an atmosphere of 2, 90 minutes, 1 hour under atmosphere, 15 minutes up, 15 minutes down, okay, for 3 months, they proved that it increases telomeres 20%. This is unheard of. Your biological clock just got turned back. Okay, that's how powerful. And I work with a Dr. Paul Harch also, who is a pioneer in hyperbaric medicine out of Louisiana. And he's the one that went to the Senate with Dr. Williamson and got to improve wound healing for diabetics in the VA because it heals wounds also. It's an amazing technology that's just coming now out. I did it almost 20 years ago for addiction. Now, who in the world is going to say drugs don't damage and alcohol damage the brain?
Nobody's going to say that.
Right? So, do we have time to get into now what really works?
I want to ask you how you saw that affect people with PTSD.
Very interesting. It definitely helps them. Because PTSD is multifaceted, just like everything else. Now, I'm a trauma expert. I do EMDR. You're familiar with EMDR, right? Eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I redeveloped it. What I did was, I'm also an NLP. I have a master's in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and I'm a hypnotherapist also. And with karate, we do holotropic breathing. I combined all those modalities together with the EMDR, and it improved the EMDR, I would say, about 20%. Like, it's incredible. Now, what people don't understand about EMDR, okay, is it's real simple. It's used for trauma, okay? It was founded by a Dr. Shapiro, who stumbled upon it, all right? She was depressed, and there was tall, I don't know if you heard the story with the tall grass flowing in the air, and her eyes got fixated on it. All of a sudden, the depression left, right? And she couldn't figure it out. And being a researcher, she looked at everything that she did. There was a team out of Berkeley that was doing REM studies, rapid eye movement studies, and she put the pieces together and formulated this moving your hands in front of someone's eyes in different patterns, okay? Which actually, it's interesting how it works. It actually breaks that pattern in the brain. See, in my understanding of how the brain works, we have software, which talk therapy deals with, but we also have the hardware. Okay, and guess what? Just like a computer, if you erase off your computer, guess where it still is? It's on your hard drive. Okay, the technique that I do and EMDR does, it actually erases it off the hard drive. And that's why I see it's a locked unit when you're doing trauma, and it keeps recirculating itself, and it forms neural pathways in the brain. And it's triggered it could be triggered by smells, by sounds, by images, by situations. And, you have to get all of those components together if you're going to tie that little knot into getting rid of the trauma. So that's another thing that I do, that I love. But
What, so you've got the hyperbaric chambers, you've got the EMDR that you're using. What other modalities have you found being very effective?
Okay, we did aromatherapy. most people don't realize aromatherapy really works. You know, you have acupuncture, auricular therapy, the NADA protocol it's called, okay? You have neurofeedback, biofeedback. We also did light and sound therapy, which was good for PTSD and depression. We did amino acid therapy. Okay, now amino acids that we did research in that. We did about 15 papers on that. We did with fMRIs and CAT scans. And we would give them, it was a double-blind study. It was the gold standard. And it's very interesting what I learned with all these scientists and doctors. See, vitamins, everybody says, well, they're not regulated. It's true, but it's not true. If you have a GMP lab, they're the third party that's looking at what's going on. But if you're doing research, there's another level to it, okay? Where you have to have, if you're doing a compound and you got different nutrients in your compound, you have to make sure it comes from the same place, because nutrients come from different places. There's like calcium carbonate, calcium citrate, and all these different things. So you have to know the molecular structure of each nutrient that's in your vitamin, your compound. And this way, when you give it to different universities, they have to come up with, that's how they come up with the same results. So we did that, and we found out that what we did, it up-regulates dopamine, which is unheard of for natural stuff, okay? Amino acids, most people may not know, are the precursors for neurotransmission. Simple. What else did we do? We looked at heavy metals. Most people don't know about that. Mercury, lead, antimony, arsenic. People go, where do you get arsenic from? Rice. Oh, look it up. Don't believe me. I always tell people, look my stuff up. Don't believe the word I tell you. All right? Now, what does it mimic? It mimics attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity disorder, and possibly also bipolar disorder. They always confuse the two sometimes in early diagnosis with attention, right? With attention deficit disorder, they think it's bipolar and vice versa, right? They're very similar. So, does the body affect mental health? I think it does, okay? And, you know, most people always do the psychological approach. Well, if that's the case, just take the head, send it to treatment, leave the body home. Because if the body doesn't matter, you know, just send the head there. What we learned is also allergies. Certain allergies cause depression. People don't know this. I know it sounds crazy. Well, give a guy that's allergic to peanuts, let me know how he does. It's only food, right? So that's what EpiPens are for, by the way, okay? So what else did we do? We did so much stuff. We did sound therapy. Sound therapy is really interesting. We presented in the New York Academy of Science. We did a poster presentation. And New York Academy of Science is one of the oldest organizations in New York City that people do their presentations. And then we did a sound presentation that we did at different decibels, affects the brains in different ways. And you see they had kids, they had scientists there talking about autism, all kinds of different things, dementia. Sound affects us. Our whole environment affects us. We're not thinking. Now, addiction. Let's look at addiction. Addicts use most of the time because they're depressed or they have anxiety, besides being bored and all the other stuff, right? Well, why do they have depression and anxiety? Oh, mommy left you with 3, daddy beat you when you were 4, you're traumatized. Yeah, all that stuff is true. But if you have a low thyroid, do you think you have depression and anxiety? Absolutely. How about if you have leaky gut syndrome or H. pylori? It's a gut problem. Do you think you have depression and anxiety? Absolutely. We found that most men that come into treatment had low testosterone. Wow. Depression and anxiety. Closed head injuries, behavioral problems, depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. Hypoglycemia, alcoholics are famous for that. Depression and anxiety. So look at all these co-contributing factors. When someone does an intake, in other words, when people come in to talk and see what they're doing, see what they're drinking, see what they're eating. I mean, it's wild that we're not doing any of this stuff. We're not looking at other co-contributing factors. I'm not saying that's the only thing, okay? But when you put all this together, it's a perfect storm.
Pretty
So
impressive.
a lot of things I lecture about.
That's pretty impressive. What's I know we're getting short on time, but tell me what's in the future for you, and because I know you're working on a lot of projects right now.
Well, in the future right now, I'm working on South Beach Detox. It's in North Miami Beach. I don't know what it's South, but, you know. Anyway, I'm helping them to bring it up to the 21st century. And what I want to do is mind mapping, but not just mapping the mind. Okay, so you find out the deficiencies. Okay, wow, you got deficiencies. So now what does he do? All right, so, you know, there's a lot of stuff you can do. All right? The neurofeedback, the only thing about neurofeedback, you have to keep them in for 30 days. Most of the time, you don't have 30 days. Okay? Treatment is deficient. Like we said back in the earlier, it's 70 years behind the times. First of all, okay, that model, that 28-day model was founded by 2 students. Okay, so the story goes, they didn't have any imperial knowledge, nothing. They came up with it, they sold it to Hazelton. Hazelton sold it to insurance companies. And it was really based on an alcoholic model. Now, we all know drugs are much more, you know, damaging than alcohol, even though alcohol is serious. So, guy goes to treatment, right? He comes out of treatment. Now, they call it detox. It's the wrong term. For those of you who are listening to this, go look up what detox means. It means to detoxify, not put other drugs on top of other drugs, okay? So what we're really doing is stabilizing people. We're not detoxing them. Once they're stable, their blood pressure is good, okay, the psychological is okay, they can leave. A lot of times they leave before that, but anyway, all right? So the bottom line is that that model's all wrong, because now they come out of that detox, maybe they'll go to treatment, maybe, okay? Now we're asking them 42 questions. We're doing what is known as a psychosocial and a history and all this. Their brain is still foggy. They're out to lunch. They just want to, they'll yes you to death about anything, okay? We had a little comedy act once in my treatment center. I said, tell you what, after 2 weeks, I want you to do a psychosocial on the same guy. They did it, and it was like it was a different person. So it was like almost like stupid, okay? Mm-hmm. So the bottom line is, and then you have to put people on meds in treatment. I don't know if you guys know that.
Yep.
You know why? Because the insurance company says if they're not on medications, they don't need to be there. Now, let's look at medication. Okay, you can look this stuff up, guys. Medication, SSRIs, Mayo inhibitors, they were all meant for short-term intervention. They were not meant for long-term. They don't have any research on long-term, what happens. If they do, it's minimal. And cross-pollination of medications. It's an educated guess. Oh, you're not feeling too good? Oh, take a little bit more of this. Oh, no, take a little less of it. No, let's give you this other medication to counteract that medication. And then if that doesn't work, we'll get another medication to counteract the other two. By the time you're done, okay, you're overweight, all right? You're still depressed, and you're walking around like a zombie. I mean, that's a good outcome, I guess, huh?
Well, for some maybe, but not for me.
Not for me either.
Sounds like the way you started.
My son almost died from this disease. And, you know, I always wanted a son, and I was in recovery, and I was watching them put charcoal down his throat, and, you know, to absorb the medications that he took, and he was OD'd, and he almost died. And I swore to myself that every chance I get, I'm going to tell people to look at other things other than what the medical community is saying. Okay? Because what they're saying isn't necessarily always correct. Now, I'm not against medication, okay? But I think it has its place, but not for everybody and all the time. So that's just my bias. You know, and some people may have to be on medication all the time, but very small. just like Suboxone. Does everybody know about Suboxone? Okay.
Yep.
It's buprenorphine and naloxone together. The reason why they put it together is so addicts can't shoot it up. Okay? What people don't know, it's an opioid. It's a synthetic opiate. Now I'm going to tell you the comical act with all this, all right? So we're giving people an opioid so they don't kill themselves, right? And they don't take opiates, which is like heroin and morphine and all this. So let me tell you a little story. In the early 1900s, we had a morphine epidemic coming from China, all right? Guess what we did to make that go away? Heroin. Go look it up. We were giving addicts heroin, okay, so they get off the morphine.
Oh, shoot.
Here we are again. I guess we don't learn from history.
It's tough. It's tough. It's an interesting, recovery is definitely an interesting industry, one very different from any other business or industry I've been in for sure. And we have a long ways, we've come a long ways, and I think we still have a long ways to go to figure out what works best for people. But I love the way that you've talked about alternative approaches and coupling those together, with treatment. It's pretty incredible, and I love your story, John. I really appreciate you coming on to tell your story and talk about your activity and your passion for recovery and how that's affected you in your life. It's pretty impressive. People are going to want to talk with you. They're going to want to get a hold of you. What's the best way for them to do that?
They can call me.
I
give out my phone number.
That's pretty cool.
786-271-5732. And if you call me for baloney, I won't talk to you. If you call me because you need help, I will.
That sounds fair. That sounds perfectly fair. John.
So, that's why I wrote the books. My one book is How to Beat Your Addictions and Live a Quality Life.
Uh-huh.
And the way I wrote it was I interviewed 200 addicts and alcoholics and people that had eating disorders and all kinds of other addictions. And I asked them what they did and, how they stayed in recovery. And I meant real recovery, not just quitting drugs and alcohol and behaviors. I mean, living a life of recovery. It's a big difference. Okay? Then I interviewed about 150 people that chronically relapsed on different addictions. I want to know what they did and what they didn't do. And I put that into the book, and then I put my own experiences in, and then I put some of the research papers in there, and then we put in some of the diets and vitamins you can take and all kinds of things. And I made it with big letters because addicts don't like to read, all right? So I made it in little paragraphs, little blurbs, so they don't have to get overwhelmed by reading. I know how we are, and I made it real simple. So it's in a lot of hospitals, a lot of different programs. I give the book away. It's not about making money. And my life story, the kid from the South Bronx who never gave up. There's a lot of stuff in that. I was sexually abused when I was a kid. I had an eating disorder early on. All those things are in the book. And a lot more stuff. It's a pretty wild book.
It sounds like I've got it on my must-read list because I definitely want to hear your story and the journey that you were on. So I love that you share those books with the listeners. We're going to have you on again, John, so that we can learn more from you.
Oh, listen, I love to share information. Anything you have that that's new, please let me know.
Fantastic.
To me, I learned in life, you have to be a good student if you want to be a good teacher.
That's true.
No, I'm a student.
Yep. Yep, I love that. John, thanks for being on with us today.
Hope I didn't bend your ear too much, but,
Loved it.
Yeah, I loved it.
I loved it. Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Hey,